Welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. My name is Marshall Ramsey. I'm editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist with Mississippi Today. We have a really great episode ahead of us today, and thank you for joining us. For many times when I go speak, I always love talking about how everybody can be an artist, right? And how our artwork, no matter what it is that we do, not everybody's going to draw cartoons like I do, per se, but the type of art that we do, whether it's the work that we do every day, can change lives and it can make a big difference. And our guest today, I would say, is the epitome of that. I'm really actually glad to get to meet him because I'm a big fan of the work that he's doing. We have Carlton Turner here. He works across the country. And I mean, you literally do work across the country. You just told me your travel schedule the last couple of weeks. I literally laid down and took a quick nap.
It's true.
You're on the plane a lot. Works across the country as a performing artist, arts advocate, policy shaper, lecturer, consultant, and facilitator. He's the founder of the Mississippi Center for Cultural Production, Sipp Culture. That's right, Sipp Culture.
Co-founder.
You're the co-founder.
Yes.
That's right.
Alongside my wife, Brandi Turner.
Definitely don't want to get Brandi mad at us. No, she's pretty awesome too. You use arts and agriculture, and I love that combination to support rural community and economic development in your hometown of Utica, Mississippi, where your family has been there for 10 generations.
8 generations.
8 generations. That's right. I gave them okay.
Hopefully we'll be there for a few more.
That's pretty impressive. 8 generations, and you live there with Brandi and your 3 children as well.
Yes.
So you got your whole family there.
Yeah, my daughter's birthday is tomorrow. She'll be 17.
What?
Shauna. Yes.
Oh yeah. See, I've got a 16-year-old, so I actually know that's probably where we get our gray hair from.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got great kids though.
Thank you.
And we got 3 also. So,
they're great too.
Isn't it amazing when you go from 2 to 3? You go from cars to minivans to you can't sit in booths anymore.
One growth is has a world of impact on your family.
It definitely changes it.
Yeah.
So, but we'll tell her happy birthday.
We'll do.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time to come talk to us a little bit.
My pleasure.
Yeah, Sipp Culture's incredible, and I love the connection between, obviously, between the arts and because agriculture. And, for years I've lived in Mississippi, and here we live in a land with some of the most fertile land, and we have food deserts, we have all kinds of health issues because of diet and everything else. And I really love the way that you, like I said, connect the two together. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and so forth, because it is incredibly important.
Sure. So the Mississippi Center for Cultural Production was organized as a community conversation to really understand how we as rural community members can impact the development of our community for the 21st century.
Yeah.
Rural communities are often left out of the larger picture of what's happening in the state, nationally. The development plans that happen are usually around urban centers. And we don't necessarily take that for granted. We understand that where the people are is where the energy and the resources will go, and that there's so many resources and so much abundant potential energy in our rural communities that we can help to harness to develop the type of systems that really feed the type of communities we need into the future, not just looking backwards or continuing to redevelop or renovate the same old structures, but building new structures and infrastructure really speak to what our needs are moving forward.
I know small towns in Mississippi have really taken it on the chin over the years. I mean, right now we're talking a lot about hospitals and then losing hospitals.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that really got me was when fairly good sized small towns started losing their grocery stores.
Yeah. It's a critical infrastructure loss. And for our community, we lost our grocery store in 2014. So we're almost going on a decade without that crucial infrastructure, which means that our community, I often say that no one in our community has starved to death since the closing of the grocery store.
Right.
People make a way and they find how to adapt to the changing circumstances that their community goes through. But we are also a community that has this long, rich history of agricultural production. And so it's almost criminal that we don't have access to food for our community that's grown locally or that's accessible locally. So the grocery store also meant for us is the losing of that in 2014 wasn't just the loss of the grocery store and the economic engine that comes along with having that space, but it also meant the loss of our social structure. So the grocery store is that place where you go and you run into people in the aisles that you're not scheduling a coffee with, you're not scheduling a business meeting, you're just connecting and checking in because you inhabit the same space. And because it's such a small town, people that run into each other have this deep and rich history. And so that's where you find out how people are doing in their homes, how folks' kids are doing and growing up, what issues people are being challenged with, what people's views are on what's happening in the community. And without that grocery store, which was the last place where that social fabric was still kept intact, we now have even less of that fabric to build our community strength on.
And so how are some of the things you're doing help build back that culture and help build back that place of being able to get back together?
Yeah, so I think we have a number of initiatives that we're advancing. I would say first and foremost would be the community engaged design practice that we've employed since we started our work in 2017. And what community engaged design means is that as the co-directors or co-founders of the organization, we didn't come with a plan.
Right.
We came with a process.
Yeah.
And the process was to facilitate a conversation that looked at what the needs of the community were, and then understand how can we then terraform our community to fit the needs of that our community are identifying that they have. And so we worked with the Gulf Coast Community Design Studio as our first kind of like group of community architects and designers. So we would take community conversations, we would host conversations, storytelling, narrative collection, and then we would transform and translate those things into built structure designs. And so from that, we developed the Mississippi Center for Cultural Production White Oak Artist Residency, which is our main artist space where we host artist residencies for artists in the 5-state region. We bring artists in, we support them, give them space to think about their work, to have advisors and consultants, and help them to advance their work coming from their own communities, many of which are also rural artists. We also have a 17-acre green space that we have a 1.5-acre community farm where we train young farmers in local food production. We also have an 1,800 square foot commercial greenhouse on that property. So we're growing, we're training, we're actually producing food in the community. Almost all of that food gets distributed to our elders that are experiencing challenges getting to the grocery store back and forth. So we have an elder share program where we're serving about 85 families. Just between April and July, end of July, we produced about 5,500 pounds of food on that property and distributed that to the community.
What are some of the crops that y'all grow?
Oh, everything that folks like to eat in the country. Greens and tomatoes and peppers and corn and watermelon. We had a 51-pound watermelon this year.
Oh my gosh, that's great, yeah.
Squash, okra, just what people like to eat. And so that has been really important for us to establish a space in which the community sees the community members growing and filling a need that exists.
Storytelling is so incredibly important, and a lot of, not just for entertainment purposes. The fact that it's literally like research. You can find out what's going on in a community with the people, what the problems are, what the challenges are, just by listening to people's stories.
Absolutely. So information technology exists in storytelling, right? For me, that's where information is first shared. We are an oral tradition people. All of human existence comes out of oral histories.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, sharing those narratives and sharing our own stories is a way for people to be welcomed into a space, because everybody carries their own story. I can't take your story. I can't supersede your story. Your story is what helps me understand who you are, how you think, where you come from, what you're interested in, what your values and what your aspirations and dreams are. What happens in a small community like Utica is that in the absence of those social spaces that we talked about a few minutes ago, the concepts of what is going on in the community get very narrow. Mm-hmm. And what this collective and individual storytelling allows us to do is to bring those individual stories together in a way that then craft a larger collective narrative for the community. So you might think you know why this store closed or why that thing did what it did, and you may have a part of the story, and it doesn't mean that your part is true or false, but it may be incomplete. And so when you begin to hear the stories of other community members, then you have the ability to piece the story together and then see the fuller picture of what's really going on in the community. So that's been a really effective practice that we've used to organize our community around collective narrative building, which is so important. But I'll end with saying the final space that we're developing that is about the social fabric is the creation of a community cultural center. Oh, nice. That will also have a commercial kitchen in it. And so that's on a corner building in Main Street that we started designing with the earliest community conversations in 2017. and have been working with an organization called Olympic Community Development out of New Orleans, and Unabridged Architects out of Bay Springs. That is Bay St. Louis. Yeah, Bay St. Louis. That is helping us to pull those things together to create a space that will be for the community. It will be for community meetings and gatherings, but also a place where people can have a sit-down meal of like fresh food. Also a commercial kitchen that can lend itself to food entrepreneurship and the development of more food business makers in our community.
One thing I've learned even from Sunday school, the Last Supper, but I mean, it seems like all great business, all great connection seems to always happen around food.
Absolutely. I think for me, when people ask about this connection between food and story, I often tell them that around the dinner table is where I've heard the best storytelling of my life.
Yeah.
And it's animated, it is multi-character, it's raucous, it's give you the biggest belly laughs you've ever had. It also will bring you to tears.
Yeah.
And I think that this place that food holds in our community cultural structure, and I think it's global, it's all around the world. Food is at the center of any culture. To put that food back as an element that is essential to our development as a cultural production space in Utica is essential, and we're really excited about that aspect of it.
I heard you talking about this, and it was just like, yeah, I totally understand this. You talked about, African Americans throughout the years, slavery through indentured servitude, and then it was almost like they got free from the land, but now it's almost like that's been a curse.
Well,
just being able to plan, and because you talk about your grandmother, you would have fresh butter, fresh milk, fresh greens,
everything.
fresh food, and how much healthier you are when you're eating like that. And that's where the curse comes right there. It's just maybe because as opposed to eating maybe like fried
processed food.
Which, that's same thing with my grandmother. My grandmother always had fresh vegetables and everything else, and now I try to eat drive through for my son, which is not good for him.
It's not good for him, and I think it's part of the challenge that we're faced in across the country.
That's
Mississippi has the poorest health statistics in the country.
Yes.
And we're closing hospitals, and we're refusing to
and
expand
look what happened
Medicaid.
during the pandemic, because we were literally every bad thing that could happen to you with COVID, we were right there.
We were right there at the top, right? And so all of these things can be traced back to our diet and the things that we consume. It's way more complicated than that. So I don't want to reduce it to just being.
I was trying to figure out how to get that, but you're right.
But
I think that but it is important. Like I said, it's important to have that connection back with good food and good.
It's essential. I mean, it's essential because if you're not gonna expand Medicaid, then we need fresh food.
That's right.
Right? Because that becomes part of the prescription to avoid a lot of the health issues and challenges that put us in such vulnerable places.
That's right.
And for my looking around at the generations that have come after me, they didn't have that grandmother and grandfather that were farming and producing a lot of all the freshness of food. And so they are reduced to fast food, to processed foods. And you can see they even have a lack of love for vegetables.
Yeah. And
so it's really difficult to increase the development of more farm land, more farmers, when people don't have a relationship to the things that grow. And so those are things that have been challenging for us. But I want to just address the issue of leaving the land. African Americans in Mississippi have always worked the land.
That's right.
That's part of that kind of cultural legacy. That was even prior to enslavement. We were agricultural communities that we come from in Africa. People left the land in Mississippi because of white terror. They didn't leave the land because they wanted to leave the land. They left because they couldn't find profit or peace in the land. My mother often told a story of going to chop cotton at the age of 5. And I would ask her, I was like, well, why were you chopping cotton at the age of 5? Well, she wanted to go chop cotton because that's what everybody else was doing. That's what the adults were doing. I said, well, whose land were you chopping on? And for so many years, I thought, I'm thinking plantation. I'm thinking that she's chopping for some, plantation owner. She said, well, it was our land. I said, well, what happened? What happened to all these acres we were, producing cotton on? And she said, well, when Daddy would take the cotton to the market, he wouldn't get a fair price. And so year after year, we went further and further into the hole. And so we had to abandon that way of life. And so that critical infrastructure that would have been generational wealth building.
That's right.
Was crippled again by the power structure that existed. So these are things that we have to, the white power structure that existed within Mississippi that continues to exist. And we have to address those things as critical to understanding where we are in this moment and how we got here. So we don't want to deal with history.
You see the lawsuits with the black farmers and so forth. So like you said, this is still going on today. And thank you, by the way, for fleshing that out a little bit, because like I said, the injustice was on this end of it and then ended up being on this end of it once that happened. Thank you. You're a fantastic artist, but tell everybody what kind of art your type of, what your art, because I mean, my art's a little different than your art, but
sure.
I wish I could do your kind of art. It's really impressive.
Well, I came into my work as a writer, and a poet, and my brother and I started a band in 1996, and we played around here in Jackson.
Which is one of the coolest names ever.
Men Under Guidance Acting Before Early Extinction. They called us Mugabe. And we played for years around here, but we also toured the country playing and working with community organizations, working with other arts and culture organizations around the country. And we did that for about 16 years. During the same time, I became an arts administrator with an organization called Alternate Roots, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And through that time, really developed a sensibility about organizational development, nonprofit organizational development, arts and culture, creative placemaking, place-based work. I am also a theater artist. I'm also a composer and writer. I'm also a photographer. I've done a lot of different things, but I know the difference between how I approach my art and people who live for their art making. And I'm not one of those people. I live for the change that comes about when you're able to apply creativity towards solution finding.
I mean, your canvas is a community center. Your canvas is a field.
Sure. And people.
And people.
To work with people, building bridges and building structures and infrastructure that allow people to find more of their freedom in those spaces.
Like I said, I'm not totally in the business of every guest I have just saying how much I admire. I do really admire the fact that you're able to turn art into being able to do it into positive change.
Thank you.
We're about time to wrap up, but I know that when you start something in 2017, around that time, obviously 2020 hits, the pandemic hits, which totally everybody had to pivot on that, and you had to pivot as well, but you kept it alive, you kept it going. So.
Well, I think our pivot was more, we didn't pivot, we deepened what we were doing. I think what happened was we were farming, or we were talking about arts and agriculture from the beginning.
Right.
And the community was like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But when the pandemic hit, people were like, oh, y'all growing food. Like, okay,
that's good.
Makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could grow more food, And so we actually got deeper into the work. We helped to provide more food and started our training program for farmers to, and working with organizations like Alcorn State University with the extension services, things like that. So we're also producing a food festival in Utica next summer on July 27th. So that's a big thing, the Homegrown Utica Fest. And that's in a partnership with the town of Utica and with the Jackson Hines Comprehensive Health Center.
Utica is a great town.
We're great, and we're going to become greater.
Is there anything that I have not asked you that you would like to add?
I think it's just there's so many opportunities to grow and develop, and we're really excited about what's happening, and we feel like there's Utica has got a lot to grow and on the rise.
Yeah. And where do you think you'll be in 5 years with this?
Oh boy, hopefully no longer having to run things day to day, and maybe practicing more as an artist and cultural worker. Yeah.
So semi-retirement.
No, I don't think so.
Of all the people in the world, I can't imagine you slowing down.
I don't think so.
Real quick, website.
www.sippculture.org. SIPPCULTURE.org.
Any other final thoughts?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you.
Thank you. We will.
Yeah, because I really do. I really applaud what you're doing. I think it's a great concept. I mean, obviously working for Alternate Roots, I mean, you probably had this kind of percolating around a little bit, and one day you decided to pull the trigger and get it done.
Well, it started as an idea that me and my brothers and sisters, who all are educators.
See, I think it's kind of great that you get to work with your family on it too.
Yeah, and it just kind of evolved into this Center for Cultural Production. So we're excited about it.
Incredible. I wish I had 1/10 of your energy.
Oh, come on.
It's all eating the good fresh vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's gotta be it.
Thank
passion
you.
too.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Appreciate it. Hey, and thank you for watching Mississippi Stories. And we'll be back next week with another edition, but you can always go to MississippiToday.org and see previous episodes, but also our great coverage and a few okay editorial cartoons as well. Hey, we'll see you back next time. And this is on behalf of Carlton, I'm Marshall Ramsey. We'll see you